Well, Alvy, are we ready to get started?
We certainly are, sweetheart. Good morning to everyone and welcome to, I cannot believe I'm saying this, to the last of our Building Bridges for Equity, Justice, and Community Lit Adult Formation series. My name is Alvy Dove Ali. I am one of the co-chairs for the St. Anne's Outreach Committee, and it is my honor, privilege, to welcome everyone this morning and to especially welcome our guest speaker, which is our very own Miss Linda Wendikoff. I honestly think that today we saved the best for last. Linda has attended St. Anne's for over 26 years, and I think I've known her for about half that time. A lifelong educator, she has been involved with and advocate for Winston-Salem Freedom Schools since 2017. She currently serves as the executive director for the Old Town Community CDF Freedom School. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and my privilege to present my dear friend and yours, Miss Linda Wendikoff.
Yay!
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it on the slideshow because I'm going to be referring to it right away. But I'm delighted to be with all of you this morning to create more awareness about Winston-Salem Freedom Schools and the Freedom School model in general. Its rich history, its mission, its impact, and how you can help support the Freedom Schools here in Winston-Salem. And I'm going to start with a brief history of Freedom Schools, which I think is important in recognizing that Freedom Schools is not just another summer program. On the screen, you see the Winston-Salem Freedom School logo, and you'll notice that the most prominent word is freedom. A major reason for that is to carry on the legacy of the historic origin of Freedom Schools, which was the 1964 Mississippi Freedom Summer. All right, let's see. Okay. Those 6 weeks in 1964 in Mississippi was another example of the amazing courage of the people involved in the civil rights movement. And it had 2 elements. One was to register as many African-American voters as possible in Mississippi, to give them the tools on what they needed to do first in order to register, and then the courage to actually go and vote when the time came. And another element of it was Freedom Schools for the Black children of Mississippi. Their purpose was to provide a parallel curriculum on what Black children were not being taught in the public schools, such as Black history and constitutional rights, to better the children's self-image, and to talk about ways to bring about change and change through social action, like to raise the next generation of leaders in the civil rights movement, and also to be agents of information about a world that was different from the one that they were experiencing. So this is a short video on those first amazing Freedom Schools in 1964.
One of the most wonderful things about 1964 Mississippi summer were the Freedom Schools.
The state of Mississippi deliberately and systematically kept Black people uneducated and ignorant, and then turned around and made education a requirement in order to participate in the political process. We were able to do the Freedom Schools in the summer of 1964 because we had almost 1,000 students coming to the state of Mississippi, thus the human resources to actually, conduct classes.
We hope to find and develop and mold local leadership among the young people. We also hope to promote a better self-image among the local Negroes.
We would send out mass flyers and everything to the churches, telling people about the Freedom School, what the Freedom School was going to entail, the courses, the activities. We got the preachers involved, we got the kids involved.
Black people couldn't go to the library. It was for whites only. And so here they are, got their own library now. They would come excited to be exposed to the teaching and to browse the books.
In the public schools where I was in school, I had never heard of Dr. Seuss. It was at Freedom School where we actually not only read the story of the Cat in the Hat, but we acted it out. Having our lives enriched by these activities really made a huge difference in my life.
We taught African American history, civics, African culture, African dance. They were learning Black history, that they were reading books that had been written by Blacks that they'd never heard of.
How were slaves first introduced in America?
As we saw back on this world map over here, America started picking up slaves along here and then bringing them back.
What we were trying to do that summer is get people to talk about their own lives, talk about good and bad, and talk about ways in which you could bring about change. I think that was very much the drive of the program.
They had a sense of being needed by something much bigger than themselves and a sense of being able to handle the problems that they were needed for. They did it by asking questions and by being encouraged to feel free to ask questions.
They were raring to go. We were just kind of like the catalyst. We were agents of information and agents of a different world. So, I mean, just the very fact that we were talking about a world that they didn't know or didn't have much experience with was exciting to them and also to us.
We set them up for the little children to come, and every day we'd have classrooms of adults, people 50, 60, and 70 years of age. The adults came to the Freedom School to learn, just like the little children.
Every time I see that video, and I've watched it several times, I'm struck by two things. One is how true today's Freedom School model is to that original 1964 Freedom School summer model, Freedom Summer model. And I'm also struck by how the need for Freedom Schools then is so similar to the need for Freedom Schools today, nearly 60 years later. So what happened next? What happened after 1964? Well, after Freedom Summer, Freedom Schools existed here and there. There was some in Detroit, I think Boston, but there was not a formal network for their implementation until over 30 years later. And what brought them to the forefront again was the work of Marion Wright. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Is the work of Marion Wright Edelman. There. Mrs. Edelman was worked with Dr. King in Mississippi. She was counsel for his Poor People's Campaign in Mississippi. And then after he died in 1969, she began the Washington Research Project, which was a public interest law firm that monitored federal programs for low-income families. And there is Mrs. Edelman standing next to Robert Kennedy in the picture. 4 years later, she founded the Children's Defense Fund, which is still in existence today. And its mission is to leave no child behind, ensure every child has a healthy start, a head start, a fair start, a safe start, and a moral start in life and successful passage to adulthood with the help of caring families and communities. And if you go to their website, that is still their mission. They did a lot of work for children, and then over the next 20 years or so. And then in 1990, a subgroup of the Children's Defense Fund was the Black Community Crusade for Children, something I've really never heard of myself. It was led by Dr. John Hope Franklin and Dr. Dorothy Height. And it's interesting, if you see I don't know if you can read the short description down here, it says it was quietly launched in 1990 to combat one of the worst crises the Black child and family had faced since slavery. And so from that, it came Freedom Schools. And then in 1995, the first official CDF Freedom School was opened in Bennettsville, South Carolina, which is where Mrs. Edelman was born, and in Kansas City, Missouri. And the CDF and Freedom Schools are still going strong over 25 years later. So I think it's important to know this background to understand that the Freedom School model is not just another summer program that's created to help children who are behind in reading. As in 1964, it is a model that is working for justice and freedom from oppressive systems, doing it through literacy and empowerment. And it has a positive impact on a child's reading ability, those who go through the program, but it's just so much more than that. So what is this model and what impact does it have? I'm first going to go over a real general framework of what the Freedom School model is. So if somebody asked me what is the Freedom School model, it is culturally affirming to the scholars who attend. It's a literacy and enrichment program. It lasts 6 weeks, just like in 1964. It is for K-12 students. It instills a love of reading. It empowers through literacy, which is key, that the scholars to excel in their ability to make a difference through education and action. It also, because of this, a result is that it prevents summer learning loss, and it is provided at no cost to the scholar. Another important part of its framework is its overall theme every year is, I can make a difference. So that is what is, we talk about that every week, and it is through the culturally affirming literature that, to a large extent, there are other ways too, but that is extended. And every year, so week 1, I can make a difference in myself, and books are read about people making a difference in themselves. In my family, books are read about that. In my community, in my country, in my world. And then the 6th week, there's a big culminating finale about what's been learned. And I think it's also important to note that every year there are different books. So it's not the same books are used every year. Every year there are different books. So this I can make a difference, this empowerment is the central theme of Freedom Schools. Another important aspect of Freedom Schools is its intergenerational leadership model, which is intentional. The classes are staffed by servant leader interns who are primarily college students or recent college graduates. The job description, CDF likes for us to hire between the ages of 18 to 30. They have to have at least 1 year of college. And that's to provide mentorship, younger people to be mentors who have possibly similar life experiences to the scholars. And the ratio in the classes, it's 10-to-1 child to adult ratio. And most sites have about 50 scholars, so have 5 classes, 10 scholars each. There's also a site coordinator that supervises the SLIs, serves as like well, I would say mother hen, but we also have male site coordinators. And then there's a project director and executive director that oversees the administration, the program, seeing it's implemented, and that the program is being implemented with fidelity. And they report directly, we report directly to the Children's Defense Fund. Another thing I want to point out before I go into the specific components of the model is that the integrated reading curriculum that is used, it is research-based. It is developed by the Children's Defense Fund. And as someone who has been in education all my life, and with reading being my primary focus, it truly is an excellent curriculum. And it is devised so that these young servant leader interns can come in, go through the manual, create meaningful, exciting lessons, and get the message of Freedom School across. All training is provided by the Children's Defense Fund. They have national trainings, project directors and executive directors. We have monthly trainings, and then we have one multi-day training in January. Site coordinators, multi-day trainings. The servant leader interns also multi-day trainings, and they're excellent. And they are conducted by the Children's Defense Fund. Before COVID, they were all done at the Haley Farm. This was Alex Haley's farm in Tennessee that CDF bought. And it's the Mecca for Freedom Schools. I mean, the experience there is incredible. And the hope is that we'll be able to get back there soon. We were hoping this summer, but they're going to postpone it one more time. And that's a picture of Haley Farm. So now what about the actual, before I get to that, just again, the general framework, it is an 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon is the schedule. We are required to provide 2 meals, breakfast and lunch. Then there's 2 hours and 45, there's Harambee. You see the 8:30 to 9 o'clock Harambee, which is the pulling together. And I'll go into that a little bit more right after this. And then 2 hours and 45 minutes of the integrated reading curriculum. And then the last 15 minutes is the deer time, where drop everything and read. Lunch and recess from 12 to 1. And then 1 to 3 are afternoon enrichment activities. Dismissal at 3, and then 3:30, the site coordinator meets with all of the SLIs for a daily debriefing. So what is the impact of Freedom School day to day on the scholars? And I'm going to talk about this in 2 ways. First, what is the impact on the scholars when they engage with the staff and program components on a day-to-day basis? And then how is the day-to-day impact confirmed by the data? And we will start with Harambee. That is after breakfast every day. And you can see just in those pictures, the enthusiasm and excitement with Harambee, Swahili for let's pull together. It's, as it says in the description on the slide, 30 minutes of self and group affirming celebration and preparation for the day. But it's a fun, it's energetic, it's a great way to start the day. But what is the impact on the scholars' lives? Harambee delivers the message that no one needs to leave their identity or culture at the door when they enter Freedom School. Instead, the Freedom School scholars, they are celebrated, they're affirmed, and they're lifted up for who they are. They promote self-efficacy. I can do this. Every day we sing the motivational song, Something Inside So Strong. And so every day we all sing together. There's something inside so strong. I know that I can make it. And so you're singing this with people who believe in you. So you increase believing in yourself and your ability to make a difference. And, which is so similar to 1964 when they said this was, improving self-image was one of the goals of Freedom Schools. It reinforces academic skills, which you see in that right rectangle. And you see some of those call and response, listening, sequencing, repetition are so important for developing working memory, which is so critical for learning. Harambee stimulates brain function through cross-lateral movements. Everything, every chant and cheer, the motivational song, everything has movements where where the scholars are using both sides of the body. And what I understand neuroscience tells us that those cross-lateral movements help to stimulate brain function. And all of this is not by coincidence. It is intentional. It's the intentional research-based design from the Children's Defense Fund in developing this model for Freedom Schools that is so impactful on the scholars. And adults who come, for example, who do our read alouds, we invite members from the community to do the read alouds, and they wish they could start their day that way. I mean, it's something you just kind of have to experience, but it's remarkable, and we're all ready to start the day after Harambee. So after Harambee, we have the integrated reading curriculum. And as it says, it's books about real individuals who made a difference. And you can see some of the titles in The Skin I'm In, The Way the Door Closes, Giant Steps to Change the World. And many, if not most of the books, they have people who look like the scholars, who tend to be mostly Black and brown children. And I have had adults say to me, adults who work for Freedom School. There's one woman who's 30 years old, and she said, it wasn't until I was in middle school until I read a book that had a character who looked like me. So the power of that, I don't think can be overtold. These are culturally affirming books and taught with culturally responsive pedagogy, and uses very enriching activities that are suggested in the manuals, so children can explore these books. One of our servant leader interns last summer said, I learned things I didn't know about our history, and really impressed upon her about how important it is to tell the truth about our history, and that she learned so much along with the scholars as she was teaching it. Tough topics are discussed. And when we interview SLIs, that's one of the things we say. We're going to be talking about difficult topics in these books. How are you going to be able to handle that? Or will you be able to handle that? And also it's critical thinking, conflict resolution, a lot of cooperative learning happens during this time. So and you might think 2 hours and 45 minutes, but it's full, it's exciting. It encourages self-awareness by having meaningful conversations with the SLIs who become trusted mentors. And it helps them, and I think the impact on them is that it helps them understand who they are in their place in the world. It exposes them to people dedicated to social action, plants ideas on how they can make a difference beyond themselves. An example, last summer, one of the level 1 books was Maybe Something Beautiful, How Art Transformed a Neighborhood. And that week I was talking to a rising first grader about what she wanted to be when she grew up. And her answer was an artist because of the book that her class had read. So it's planting, it's constantly planting seeds. And it also just that love of reading. I had several parents talk to me last summer about their children who had no interest in books prior to attending Freedom School, how they came home and they had never seen their children so interested in reading books as they were last summer. So that is the morning, and then there's lunch and recess. And then we have afternoon activities from 1 to 3 o'clock. These are, and the impact on these activities, as I like to describe them, is it allows them to interact with activities and in spaces that might otherwise be unknown. The scholars, one of the goals is that the scholars see themselves as they belong anywhere, on concert and theater stages and science laboratories, executive offices, art studios, tennis courts, and beyond. Field trips, chess, drama, tennis, STEM, guitar. I didn't know I was good at tennis, or I didn't know I was good at chess, is what we'll hear. A theater professor who we all know and love, Brooke Davis, and her son Ian came and did creative dramatics with each level at the Old Town site. And she identified several students who she said had natural acting ability and they should be in acting classes. So what we did is we identified a camp at School of the Arts that had one spot left in their August session, which is after Freedom School was over. We secured a scholarship, and that scholar was able to attend that camp at the School of the Arts, that acting camp. So again, it's spaces that might otherwise be unknown. We went to the Civil Rights Museum in Greensboro, and after returning, I was talking with a rising third grader about the experience, and his reflection was, after all those days sitting at the counter, they finally got a slice of justice and a cup of freedom. So just how meaningful that, and to see, just to be going to places and having experiences that might otherwise be unknown. And when I think of these afternoon enrichment activities, I think of, what are privileged children doing in the summer at enrichment camps? I mean, I even went to one of the private school enrichment, summer enrichment websites to see what they were offering, so that that our scholars could be getting something similar. Just a few other things to highlight. That Freedom School does. We have a weekly book distribution. The scholars get to select one of the books that was presented during the morning integrated reading curriculum, and they can take it home to keep, to help build their at-home library. We are required to have weekly parent meetings to make sure that the parents know they are always welcome and that they are also engaged with their children's experience. As I mentioned before, we have a finale at the end that recaps what they've learned for the summer. And then for the social action piece, nationwide, Freedom Schools have a National Day of Social Action. And this is where we spend time talking about activism, what it is, how to go about making change, and then having a day where we present. We didn't participate in this, but several of the sites, because we had something else planned, but several of the sites met at on the National Day of Social Action, met at Paisley, and the superintendent was there. And they presented to her what, their thoughts for what the theme was for the National Day of social action. So let's see what the data says. Well, before I get to this, to assess, let me see, I'm going to go back. So I just want to talk about this first. The Children's Defense Fund does assess. We're not required. It is optional for us to participate in, but we all do. And they do a reading inventory. In fact, we have several St. Anne's folks have been involved in this assessment process. Julie Debuson and Jack Payton Travers and Jane North last year were site testing managers. And what they do is they implement a one-on-one reading inventory with about half the scholars at the site. There's not enough time to do all the scholars and have a pre-test and post-test. So they'll do about 25 scholars the first week, and then they'll assess them again at the end of the week. So that's how reading growth is assessed. There are also scholar surveys and parent surveys. We have nothing to do with it really at the site except providing names and levels to the site testing manager. She or he sends all the information to the Children's Defense Fund. They tabulate it, and then a couple of months later, we get the results in an email. So what I'm going to present are national results to give a broad view. We are working on tabulating our local results because I know people in the community want to know what the local results are as well. And that's something that we are working on as a collective. But nationally, this was last year, 81% of the scholars either avoided summer learning loss. Either they stayed the same or their reading levels improved. And breaking that down a little more by level, you can see they're grouped by levels. Level 1, grades 1 and 2. This is 6.6 months, and this is in 6 weeks. Remember, the program is 6 weeks, so this is the increase in month. Level 2, grades 3 through 5, 9.4 months. And I have to give a shout out to Old Town. We had 12 months growth with our level 2s. Level 3, grades 6 through 8, 8 months of growth in 6 weeks. And our level 4s, grades 9 through 12, 9 months of growth, over 9 months of growth. They also, the social and emotional learning also is a big part of Freedom Schools. And I don't know how well you can see this, but the scholars also rate self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, their relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And they're given surveys for this. And so what you'll see is all of those areas, it was over at least 70% of the scholars agreed that Freedom Schools helped them to improve in these areas, which affirms that the Freedom School experience impacts the scholars socially and emotionally, as well as academically. The 90% plus for self-awareness and social awareness strongly affirms the impact of the integrated reading curriculum and its ability to help scholars understand who they are and their place in the world. So, with that, I want to say that, it's not just another summer program. One of our chants say there's no school like Freedom School, but like all great programs like this, it needs funding to operate. So how does that break down? As I said before, each site serves at least 50 scholars, and it costs $1,500 for a scholar to attend the 6-week summer program. Some of you may remember in years past, we have said $1,000 per scholar. We have increased that to $1,500 per scholar. And the main reason behind that is we have increased our salaries to the staff to a fair living wage for them. Our SLIs, we have increased their salary to $15 an hour, which, and though they're paid really a flat salary, we try to break it down to about $215 an hour, which is really a considerable increase. I don't know if it's quite double, but it's a considerable increase from what they have received in the past. And the site coordinators and project director salary also increased. So how does that break down? What's included in that? Well, the curriculum, the integrated reading curriculum, all the books, and the training breaks down to about $285 per scholar, and that is paid directly to the Children's Defense Fund, that $285 per scholar. The direct service staff, that would be salaries that we need to raise money for and be able to fund. The enrichment activities and field trips, parent meetings, supplies, and then nutrition. As I said before, breakfast, lunch, and a mid-morning snack, any facility costs that we may incur, and then transportation. We provide transportation to the site and home for those who want it. So those are ways, so that's the financial breakdown, but there are other ways to help. And with the enrichment activities, and like I put down at the bottom, think, what do other kids do at summer camps? The upper left corner, you may recognize the face in the background. That is our own Roddy Roberts, who last summer came twice a week to work with our rising 4th and 5th graders on guitar. Old Town just happened to have guitars in their music room. The music teacher had gotten guitars for other purposes, and we were able to use them. And they had guitar lessons, and they loved it. I think Roddy tore his hair out sometimes, but he was wonderful. And the scholars, they truly enjoyed it. We had one scholar who, this was scheduled to be part of the finale, and we had one scholar who couldn't make the finale, who was in the guitar class, and her mother said, her biggest concern was she wasn't going to be able to play the guitar in the finale. Down in the below, in the lower left corner, you see Brooke and Ian getting ready to do creative dramatics. In the upper right corner, you see Ian. We had tennis. We were able to borrow tennis rackets and a movable tennis net, and they just loved it. And would say, I didn't know I was good at tennis. Enrichment activities also include Legos, which they absolutely love. With the problem solving and creativity that you can do with those. That in the middle, that he was a rising 3rd grader, and he just created a fidget spinner. And I do have video actually of him using it, and it did spin using those like flower-like pieces. So, a budding engineer there. And then over in the lower right, those are called connects again. So if you have some kind of activity that you really love, and you don't have to come twice a week like Roddy did. You could come once and share it, or teach the SLIs. We had one artist come and teach the SLIs how to do an art activity with them, rather than her coming in and doing it themselves. So that's one way you can help. You could sponsor a field trip. We do have money in the budget for field trips. but some field trip, and we like to take them weekly. With COVID, we were at last summer, we were, because getting on the buses and so forth, we had to be more careful, but we did go. But taking the entire site to the Civil Rights Museum was over $700. And, we had gotten some extra money, the Old Town site, actually through the North Fund of St. Anne's, thank you. So we had some additional money that we could use. And so we were able to do the trip to the Civil Rights Museum. But, if you want to just sponsor a field trip, that could and be very targeted like that. That would be useful. We went to Riverwood Writing Center where Laura Pallavicini was. And again, that was expensive, but, for some of the scholars, it was their first interactions with horses, and they had wonderful activities. I mean, you see here, painting a horse, who would think of that? But again, it was to overcome any fears that they might have, and the horses didn't mind. And then they had a big hose and they washed it off. Something else I want to mention is that the collective, the 9 sites, we are very focused on equity. We don't want one site to have more than another site. So we are very conscious of making sure that all the sites have as equitable opportunities as possible. Of course, when you've got one at Wake Forest, you can't really create an equitable environment to the campus of Wake Forest. But so within reason, the collective does try to have equity among the sites, and that's something that's very important to us. And then servant leader interns, provide lunch for them. They work hard. Most of the time I'd go to Food Lion and buy a couple loaves of bread and cold cuts and chips and cookies, and they would go and go in the teacher's lounge and make their lunch. So a few people did, and I'll do a shout out to Jane North. She would either once or twice, she just said, how about the porch? How about, you all, here's the menu, pick an item you want, I'll go pick it up. And they just, they loved that. I had all college students or or had just graduated last year at Old Town. So they were really appreciative of that. If you feel comfortable supervising children, you can come and supervise them during lunch so that the SLIs can have a break. We really don't have breaks in the schedule so much for them. We try to cover for them when we can, but that could be something also. And any gift cards for parent meetings. I've heard when we have trainings, we discuss ideas, and one site in another part of the country said, well, we'll have a door prize, people attend, for parent, incentives for parents to attend, then we'll, pull names out of a hat for their attendance, and somebody gets a gift card to something. And here are a few pictures of our SLIs, and the one in the upper right corner, they had just painted peace rocks. Who knew how much they would love painting peace rocks? And so they had just put them at the bottom of the peace pole at Old Town. That's on the Old Town campus. So, I'll open up for questions. I'll open it up for questions, but I just want to end with, in my 5 years at working with Freedom Schools, if anybody recalls the first fundraisers that we had at St. Anne's, the big focus was you support Freedom Schools because they prevent summer learning loss. And over the years, what I have come to learn and to know and to appreciate that, first of all, it's not just another summer reading program. The model is not. And like the original 1964 Freedom Schools, it really first and foremost is a model of justice, freedom, and empowerment. And, and I'll add in that because of oppressive systems, fighting oppressive systems, but it embodies justice, freedom, and empowerment through education and action, through literacy. And it also results in the avoidance of summer learning loss, that all of that working together then, has that positive result of avoiding summer learning loss. And, and I'm a testimony, it is transformative, not only for the scholars, but for the adults. And, last summer was my first time actually being involved with a site hands-on. And at the beginning I thought, I'm going to see if this really works. I read about it, I've seen it from a distance. I believe in it, but does it really work? And when the summer was over, I was more of an advocate for freedom schools than I was when it started. It works. Sometimes I call it the freedom school magic. The program works. And when you see the change in the scholars, or the transformation in the scholars and the adults from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer, you just can't help but be an advocate for Children's Defense Fund freedom schools. Okay, that's it. So questions?
Well, Linda, I have to give you like the biggest thank you for being a mentor, an educator, an advocate for freedom schools within our community. I personally have learned so much within the past 3 years of working with our fundraiser celebrations that we've had every year, and I am just blown away. Last year, I was actually able to attend the finale ending session at the Sunnyside Freedom School, and seeing those parents and those students that attended. Now, my own daughter was not a part of this, but I can tell you right now, I was a proud mama that day. To see those kids who, especially the ones that have attended since grade school and are now in high school, and I think there was at least 2 of them that were going to be graduating that year. And one of them actually graduated from Freedom School as an Ella Baker Scholar, which takes a lot. And like I cannot express how much of a proud mama I was that day. Like none of those babies were mine, but I swear for God, I felt like it. And seeing the little ones just get so excited and being awarded for accolades, like being on a reading level that was twice what their grade level is, which is what so many of our students need to exceed. And just being in that room, hearing their success stories and the children just celebrating their friends' achievements. It's just, like I said, I was a proud mama. I cannot say that again. None of those babies were mine, but that day I just felt like a proud mom, and it put tangible evidence to the work that we do at St. Anne's to host our fundraiser every year, and to see the fruits of our labor just come to life. I was beyond awed. I was beyond inspired. Like I said, I was a proud mom. So if you have a chance to, and this goes out to everybody, to attend one of those finale sessions coming up this summer, then I highly encourage you to do, because you literally get that visual, tangible evidence that what we do is so great and just so impactful to so many kids and families in our community. So Linda, I have to applaud you, sweetheart.
Oh, well, it's a gift to me. Freedom schools have been a real gift to me. So Brad, I see your questions. Do lots of kids attend consecutive years from first grade to high school? That's a great question. And I'll have to get back to you on that. The way our sites run is we have one, and that's the Sunnyside one that Russ May runs. That's at one of our community sites. And it actually goes from kindergarten through high school. So he's been, I believe his first year was in 17 when he first started his, but I know he has that we have our three, I call them our legacy sites, Kimberly Park, Sunnyside, and Wake Forest. They have been around the longest. And they fill up with former scholars. Like they never really need to recruit because the one, except at the very, in fact, for like the kindergarten level, because of the returning scholars. So yes, scholars do return. I'll reach out to CDF and ask if they have data on that, if they do have, but usually it's an elementary level, which is levels 1 and 2. Often another site will be just middle school, which is level 3, and then high school, which is level 4. Terrence Hawkins, our first speaker, he does the Lit City. He combines middle school and high school. So he has levels 3 and 4. So, what we're finding at like with the Old Town site, our scholars who are now in 5th grade, want to continue, who are in 5th grade now and who attended last summer, want to continue, but to find a middle school site that wasn't already filled has been difficult. And then they have to travel also, because that would be Wake Forest, and they're complete. I reached out to them, they're completely filled. Sunnyside and Turn and Lit City, but they would have to then travel, and transportation is often an issue with that. You said, are there lots of kids who don't get in because of space constraints? Well, we're still, I'll say yes. 6 of the sites just started last summer. So, we're going to see if, so right now we're in the process of registering scholars. So we're going to learn with those 6 sites, what the momentum is and what our wait lists are going to be. Wake Forest always has a waiting list. And I believe Sunnyside and Kimberly Park does too. So yes, there are other options, summer options that the school system is beginning to offer. But to answer your question, I don't know if there at this point, if there are lots, because I don't think the word is out yet that there are so many sites in Winston-Salem, but that is our expectations. And how do they learn about this? A lot of it is word of mouth. Right now, we are in partnership this year. We are in partnership with the school system. As far as funding, they have given the 6 school sites, they have given ARPA funding to us for this year and for next year, and maybe a 3rd year after that. So word has gotten out. So the school system has helped to promote it in the last year. And then it's been word of mouth, but we need to do a better job as a collective in getting the word out into the community, and we recognize that. And so that's a major project that we are working on, because we find, most people in the community don't know anything about them, and we've got to get the word out. Do they need more sites? Yes. I mean, there's always there is always a need for sites. Actually, the local YMCA is going to be starting a site over by Winston, over by Winston-Salem State. The Y that's over there. They got into it too late this year. So they're all on board to have a site in the summer of 2023. yeah, there's a site at, SPEES, and we tend to do the, the inner city schools. I personally think that this culturally responsive pedagogy is for all children. That we are, this generation of children are going to be living in a multicultural society, in a multicultural, well, they do live in a multicultural society, a multicultural democracy. I'll put it that way. And so I believe this is really for all, that this type of pedagogy is for all students. But the need for this specific, for what they're doing is really, Freedom Schools is really directed to Black and Brown students from that don't have opportunities. So yes, to answer your question, yes, there's always a need for more sites. Money is always, a big issue with that. And I'd be remiss to not mention Woody Kleinert. We would not be where we are without the financial support of Woody Kleinert. Last year, the 6 sites were funded by him. The 6 new sites were funded by him. Jeez. And, and now, but that got us started, that got us out of the gate. And, and we are, and now the school system is picking up almost everything, which is huge, which is really huge. And we are very grateful for that. And now it's sustainability, so going to funds, going to foundations, that's all. How do we sustain, we're grateful for Woody, but now we need to be able to sustain ourselves going forward. We are. Brad asked, able to recruit a diverse group of SLIs that look like the scholars. And we are, when I was watching that video on Freedom Summer, it's like most of the college students that went to work at those original Freedom schools were white.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. Yes, we are. Winston-Salem State, I had 2 graduates from Winston-Salem State last summer. And again, it's word of mouth, one from UNCG, one from, I can't remember the name of the college, but in South Carolina,
Voorhees? Voorhees? Is it
No, I can't remember. Anyway, but yes, to answer your question, it is word of mouth, and in sending out as how applicants come in. And, and that's a real interesting question about, because, you have white applicants who are very, and I ask them, when I interview them, I say, I'm white, you're white, we see the world through white eyes. And so we have some good conversations about that. But to answer your question, yes. Seems like you might have younger people who might do Freedom School than Teach for America. I'm not, can you elaborate a little bit more on that, Brad?
Yeah, I can. I'm just curious about, I've got pretty familiar with Teach for America. I did not do it. I don't think it was even around when I was going through, but it's just because it seems like many of the folks who would be drawn to be SLIs might also do Teach for America, but it's early too. So
right.
Maybe it's not a feeder or a pipeline, but it could be.
That's a great point. I know Wake Forest hires all their SLIs through AmeriCorps. They have they have a connection with that. So that's where all of their SLIs come from. But yeah, we get a good, we really do get a good pool from which to select, and it just that gets out word of mouth, and folks apply. I was very pleased with our SLIs, and they're all returning a second year, which is great. That the experience was so good that they wanted to return and do it for a second year. I also just want to mention real quickly, and I know it's 10:30, yikes, is that you might want to Google the state of Illinois has given $17 million of their COVID funding for the first state-funded freedom schools. They're giving, I think it's 45 sites, $350,000, and they have an application process going in. So that's really affirming and exciting news for that. All right, it's 10:30. I know you all have to go. Thank you. And please feel free to contact me or email me or call me if you have any questions or want to help out in some way. And then there's a big fundraiser coming up in a couple weeks. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you to everyone. And we will see your bright smiling faces this morning in worship service. And once again, thank you. And have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.